and also, and I will circulate after this some handouts and PDFs of the presentation as well. So welcome. I think is what I was hoping to do in this session is to just to look at the new way of submitting the entry form this year, to look at the actual entry form, to highlight a little bit as an adjudicator what I would be looking for, and also to give a brief summary at the end of the special awards, because there's 20 of those and there's so many, sometimes it's a bit confusing to know what's what. So I've sort of tabulated that and I'll send that as a Word document to you afterwards. So welcome. The first thing we would do on the entry form is not, sorry, hang on, is if you haven't got the entry form, you can download it from the Tidy Towns website. So if you go to the website itself, very simply, tidytowns.ie, and you enter and click on the competition from the homepage and enter onto entry forms, and you will get into the actual page itself with all the information for the competition. So when you get to that page, the entry form is available in both English and Irish, also in a Word version and a PDF version. So the PDF version, for those of you who may be not aware, it's you handwrite into that unless you've got some special software. And the Word version is what I would normally recommend groups to use, because they can type and edit and get an information all collated as they're happy. The closing date is the 2nd of July, and entries this year are all by email. And this is the first time they're doing email entries, and it's aware that they're doing that, and the entry forms will then be emailed on to the judges. And this is partly as well because none of the civil service staff are back in the Tidy Towns unit. The staff there are still all home working, whereas before they'd have to go in and manually sort through 900 entry forms. It's hoped that they will be able to do this remotely and send it on as well. So once you pick your right entry form, on that page, I would also recommend that you look and download your terms and conditions. They're not in the entry form, normally they're not this year. And it contains just some helpful advice, but also just things like one entry per community, and the email address, and the fact that your total size of your entry form has to be 20 megabytes. So with that information together, the important thing for you to remember is that the entry this year is for 2 years worth of work. So we're adjudicating from the 1st of June 2019 to the 2nd of July, the deadline date, 2021. Excuse me. So before you start, one of the big things I would recommend is look back at, sorry, I've written there, review your 2029 entry form. What I meant to write was review your 2029 entry report, your adjudication report. Because it's very likely that the person who adjudicated you in 2019 will be the adjudicator checking your entry form for 2021. So bear that in mind when you're collating the work for your entry this year. Some of this is really simple stuff, and apologies if I'm teaching grannies to suck eggs, but put your pictures in with your texts, have your before and after pictures. And one of the big things to remember from last year's entry, or the entry form from 2019 and before, identify your projects, be they new projects, new within from 2019 to 2021. Are they projects that you've completed prior to 2019, but you're maintaining them? Or are there projects that you are planning? So again, just to be aware of that in all your submissions and all your different adjudication categories. On the website this year, there are 5 sample maps. And I suppose I just wanted to show you what's there and the different styles and imagery we get from maps. And it's really nice. They stand out when they're hand drawn, where they can be, and then they're hand annotated. So what I'd recommend, if you have a good map or you've got a good artist in your midst that can do a good map like this, that you save it, you photocopy it, and then you can handwrite it year on year. So here we have Kilmurry Village entry form here, very simple. You can see they've got the cemetery here, they've got the main streets, and they've got entrance points here to the village of places that they've noticed and want you to look at. In Ystymon, what's really nice here, they've got the N for new projects completed, the M for projects that they've maintained, or FP for future projects. So here you have an M1. So this is a project that has been in existence already beside Aldi, and it's project number 1. So in the text, when I see a reference to M1, I know what that's about. Here on the main street, you can see N8. So a good Northern Irish accent, there's a good 8 for you there. This is the N for a new project that's happening on the main street. So when, as an adjudicator, we would be walking around, we'd be aware of that. This year, as you know, the adjudicators are going to be desk assessing them. So it's just going to be something that maybe if it was myself, I might hop onto Google Maps. I might try and do some image search online as well as check your entry form too. Other maps here, the map on the left is Spanish Point. And they have their legends simply here, and just the main road through the bypass or to the edge of the town, to the eastern side of the town, and different images for numbers to indicate where to look at imagery. Capamore and Tipperary here, again, a very simple map, but the main thing, it does have the key buildings that as an adjudicator you can orientate yourself. So you've got the library here, you've got the Star Ballroom here at the end. And finally, the last map is Bray. It's very like other maps I've seen for maybe Tullamore or Kilkenny. And here they have it coded by category. So a red dots with numbers 1 to 10 are points within the town of Bray relating to the adjudication category, streetscape and public places. So points to look at. Now, what they don't have in this one are the new or maintained projects, but it does help orientate yourself as you go around, if you're looking at the town itself. So that's the map. That's one of the key things that you put in with your entry form. As in 2019, the marking structure remains the same for the point system. So you have your entry form here to your right. You've got celebrating 30 years of sponsorship of the competition from SuperValue. And you've got pictures there from Glasslock with their horse statue there made of horseshoes as we're on the front cover of the entry form. So the content, most of you are really good at doing your entry forms by now. So, but just to summarize, include figures and details where available. So rather than say we held our Easter spring clean, you could say 15 volunteers helped for 2 hours each for the Easter spring clean. And as an adjudicator, to me, that really helps create an image in my head of the numbers. It helps quantify your work and really helps to emphasize the effort that you've put in. At the start of the entry form this year, It does say, where possible, I don't know if you can see here, it says, where possible, please identify under each category if your projects address one or more of the Sustainable Development Goals. You don't have to. They're just saying you could do it where possible. Oh, sorry. And just in the latest edition of the Tidy Times newsletter, just last month, there's a 2-page article there from Gieshel about how they went about thinking, what does this mean to them? And they've got in that, there's some really nice examples of what they've actually done, or what they realized that they were doing anyway is applicable to the Sustainable Development Goals. Other things I mentioned before were the circular economy. That's another one of those buzz phrases that it's worth trying to mention if you can in your text where appropriate. Let your pictures do the talking. Remember your project types. Are they new? Are they future or maintained projects? And your adjudicator will also be looking at the relevance of the material that you include. So maybe be a little bit critical that do I really need to have a scan or an image of every parish bulletin for every month? And we have seen that before, so it's worth just being aware of that as well. Any questions so far? Oh, there's something in the chat. Would you add photographs directly into the map with arrows to locations, or would the judges find that too busy? I would be tempted to put the photographs in the text of the actual entry form rather than necessarily on the map, unless it's something very specific to the map itself. So I would try and keep the map easier. This year is quite different, but next year we will be going out on a wet evening like this with the map in hand to try and get around to navigate the place. Marguerite also asked, will your adjudicator check Facebook? A lot of them would. I'd say most of them will, and especially nowadays, most of them. But if you don't have Facebook, do not panic. It's just more, we would check it just to see what might be there, and it gives you another way to get a good flavour of what you've done. If you have Facebook and that's suddenly panicking you, you know, you can put posts up and you can backdate them as well. So you could put posts up today, but date them back to March and things like that to show some of the work if you have got photographs. And as Michael says, Facebook is a great way to help you remember what you've done over the past 2 years, because 2 years is a lot of time to do. The other comment there from Michael is about the size. We'll give you a lot of photographs. Towards the end of this presentation, I'm just going to give you a few tips on how to keep your photograph sizes small, how to make your entry form smaller as well. Okay, the next question there popped up from Gertrude is, how many photographs on average per category would you recommend? Again, it gets back to, are they relevant? Do they say something? And also it might be that you maybe put more in, and then at the end, if you realize, if you think that it's just too unwieldy or doesn't, the size is too big, maybe cut out a couple. So off the top of my head, Gertrude, maybe 4 per category if you can, and if you have them in low resolution and you enter them at low level. Okay.
Shannon, just one question about linking to SDGs. When you're talking about a project, do you just put down the SDG number alongside those projects? Is that what you do? You
could do, or you could just say, you could even put a sentence that says, this helps, this is linked to gender equality, SDG 5, or just, I would be tempted to, depending on how much space you have, as you say, what you just recommended, brackets, SDG 5, close brackets. So simple as that.
Okay.
In the Gieshel article, they go into a bit more detail about how things link and how things cross. But again, let's just see how much space you have. I actually think that the Tidy Towns unit are worried that a lot of you guys won't have any information because most groups have not been able to do work for the past 2 years. But I actually think you will have an awful lot to tell them over the 2 years. So I think you're going to have the other problem in that you want to keep your information short and snappy. Okay. Sarah, she's put in there, if anybody did not see the Sustainable Development Goal Communications Pack, they can circulate it again. It went out, I think, on the 5th of May, because I was looking for that email today. It's really good. It's a zip file attachment to the email, and you can pick up every single one of these SDG symbols or emblems by themselves and drop it into your entry form as well. Ideal if you're doing Word or working through the application form in Word. Okay. So I'm going to touch now on the 8 different adjudication categories in turn. Just calling out what I, as an adjudicator, would sometimes look for or sometimes might be attractive to me. And I know you might not all want to share your secrets. This is quite generic, but again, if you've got specific questions, do ask away. So the first category, community involvement and planning. And it's how you reach out across your community. And in the actual entry form itself, it's got all 17 of the SDGs linked there. There's questions that sort of ask how many is on your committee, how many volunteers do you have? So if I'm looking at that and I think, oh, there's only 3 in the committee, that would maybe send out a couple of alarm bells to me. Are you really engaging? Or so maybe think about that, you know, or maybe have you got a succession plan in place that your number is quite low? But if your number is low and you've got a lot of volunteers, that's maybe better. Just emphasize maybe if your committee number is small, why that may not necessarily be a problem, because you've got other ways to connect across the community. And it says enter there the level of voluntary commitment as well on the entry form. So this is where you can talk about your engagement with young people, the outreach that you do. All of you are going to be writing in your application form that you've done this online training. Don't forget about that. And you know how many hours that's dedicated. You've got about 7.5 hours of online training that you've done this spring. Mention in this section about your long-term planning. Are you developing any trails or community orchards? So Sligo Environmental Network was in the paper today all about the outdoor edible orchards that they're planting across Sligo town with the tidy towns there. Maybe have you been involved with any virtual parades in the past 2 years? What school links you might have been involved with? And do highlight in this section or this part any social media that you do have. So getting back to that question about if you have a Facebook, if you mention it here or a Twitter handle, most of the adjudicators will actually go and just see, well, what are you doing there? Gives us, as I say, a really nice flavor of the work that you do. Highlight your links with others, your links with the PPN or the National Parks and Wildlife Services or Diversity Ireland, IT Sligo or local businesses and people like that, and Sligo Environmental Network. Other questions that to me, I would always look at in particular. So one of the questions is identify any specific projects on which you have worked over the past 2 years. Now don't panic if there haven't been any, but you could talk about, again, you've been doing online training and thinking about what you're doing. Another question I mentioned for is the youth links. How do you link with young people? So you've got pictures here from Carney Facebook, just along their new trail that they're developing, and they put these down for Easter. So just nice little things that the preschool, how they've linked in with the trails and the work that they're doing. The other question is, how long has your community been involved with the competition? And how has your community benefited from the competition? Again, I would say at that point, they're the questions I like to read the answers to. I like to think, what does the competition, you know, what difference has it made to your community, if any? or what ideas have come from it as well. Do mention, I've highlighted in blue here, your long-term plan that you have and your attendance, as I said, at the training courses. Sarah's just put in the chat that Ireland is in the process of developing migrant integration strategies in every county, as well as the national inclusion and anti-racism strategy. So there's a nice idea about growing plants and food that represent the different cultures. That's lovely. So sort of an edible food trail or sculpture trails. What they do with Globe House with the at the model, the dining experiences that they can do there as well. John, you've put in community involvement, do you put in the sustainable development goals in each of the subsections? I would just put one or two in that are, you know, you could end up doing an awful lot of repetition when it comes to these SDGs, I think, because nearly everything you do, but I would just maybe highlight a couple of nice little projects or key pieces of work as well. And the next question there is, do you just mention the projects or give details? In this one, at this community involvement, it just asks you to mention the specific projects. So I would just mention, like if it's a sensory garden, I would just say sensory garden, and then you'll have the details of it in the section on nature and biodiversity. Okay. So streetscape and public places. So as an adjudicator, I'd be looking about the presentations of your buildings at daytime and at nighttime. Often we could be walking around your community in the evening time. And if you have lots of shutters, which are very bland, or you've got lots of windows which are papered up, or have these full window stickers, you might not feel as safe at night. There might not be as much lights. But for example, Sligo Town has got the purple flag, which is all about looking after people at night. So awareness of special buildings in your areas, are they protected? Are they, you know, and a lot of the communities in Sligo have got some lovely present buildings that also the look at things we were looking at, maybe is connectivity, the little lanes. We mentioned before, we talked about the accessibility audit that Sarah did in her residential area, Tonafobble, I think it was. And there are things, if you've done that, if you've assessed what's going on there. Again, in the paper just today, in today's Champion, there's issues about the derelict buildings in the mill at Ballastadair and the unfinished shopping blocks in Grange, and some very unsightly buildings. I would mention that in your entry form, that we're aware of it and that progress is happening.
Just to note, Sharon, I don't know if there's anyone from Sligo Tidy Towns group on, but there was actually a walkability audit done of the whole of Sligo Town as well. So whether not intentionally perhaps, but there might be a lot of actions that have been done that might have addressed some of the things. So I could send a copy of that on if there was anyone from Sligo Towns group who wanted to look at that walkability.
That's lovely, Sarah. I don't know if anybody is, but it could even be helpful for people who want to replicate that in their own areas as well. Other things under streetscape and public places are the playgrounds, signage, wayfinding, shop signage. Use of Irish in shop signage is one of the things that keeps coming up recently in our training. And shop windows, and I've put in there that one of the special awards this year is from the Royal Institute of Architects of Ireland, and it's the smallest prize. It's only €500, but all you have to do is take 2 pictures. So I was in Ballymote this morning, and I was thinking, okay, you've got the Garda station with the lovely big modern window, and then just up the road are there's the old building with the different heritage features, including the wagon wheel and the weighing scales in the windows. So if Ballymote's there today, you could enter that competition. All you need is 2 pictures. You're in a chance for €500. I'll talk to you a little bit more about that in a minute, but there you go. Okay. Oh, Michael Barrett's there, of course. So if you can, Sarah, Michael's asking if you can email that straight to him.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, so great. So that's just on some of the things we'll be looking for under the streetscapes. And then moving into green spaces and landscaping. Now, we've done quite a few talks about the All Ireland Pollinator Plan and actions that you can do for biodiversity. And we've talked about low maintenance planting in public spaces. So bearing that in mind, your adjudicator will be looking at your landscaping schemes that you're doing or working on and thinking, why? What is the purpose of this? Is it seasonal? Is it softening a hard area? Is it to make a big visual impact on maybe an approach road or somewhere where there's a lot of foot traffic in an area? So there's some of the things just to be aware of. Why have you chosen this as your key landscape area? And again, native trees and native shrubs, especially on the sort of the boundaries of your communities. This is where Rathcormac and Marybeth, you've done that whole new tree hedgerow planting there, which just, you could highlight that as part of, you're on a main primary road, but you want to do this to really improve it for wildlife. So you've got a lot to praise for the work that you've got in there. As an adjudicator, we would look for problems, and problems would be things like underplanting of trees in boxes. And I know we do a lot of that in Sligo, and it does help in traffic. So it might be worth this, if you're showing pictures of trees in boxes, ideally they would always say, have your trees planted in the ground. So Michael there for Sligo Town, you could talk about the new trees that have been planted at the Ross Point Junction in there. And where you have trees in tubs, you can just say, you could talk about the fact that because there was no point in planting trees because there was going to be so many roadworks coming up, or there's a temporary fix and the trees will be moved into different areas. So there are some things, if we see problems, be prepared to answer that as well. Perennial plantings is the big one where possible. And then that, if you're doing your perennial planting, that will link to the SDG. I'm trying to think of which SDG that will link to. But sort of sustainable communities, for example, would be one. And good health and well-being as well, from sensory gardens. It makes people feel good when they see something nice in the area. If you're using your own compost, which many of you do now, again, that links to the Sustainable Development Goals as well. Does anybody know off the top of their head which SDG that would be if you're using your own compost? It'll save me look it up.
Circular economy.
Yeah, absolutely. Good one. Responsible consumption and production could be another one as well. And that's number 12. And that one. Any other SDGs of things that you might be doing that you think, okay, that would fit into there? So if I was, think of the Carrow roundabout by McDonald's, where you have native birch trees planted there. You've got lots of pollinator planting there as well. So to me, it could be good health, SDG 3, good health and well-being.
Climate action.
Climate action, yes. Which number was that one?
13.
Well done. Okay, so that could be benefit to climate action because you're providing a carbon sink.
Life on land.
Brilliant, whoever that was. Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm listening who's shouting out. Life on land, that's an excellent one, number 15. So again, you're providing additional habitats. And again, that's a lovely one, as we said, for the roadside hedges that have been planted in Rathcormac. Again, you should have that linked into that one as well. Okay. Nature and biodiversity in your doorstep. So as an adjudicator coming in, you've got a wealth of projects that you could be talking about. I know that from all the different activities that you do. So I would be looking for evidence of any education projects you've been doing around that, any conservation, and any celebrations. So we've talked a lot over the past 4 to 5 weeks about, different ways in which you could be celebrating nature and biodiversity. So be it walks or talks or pictures on your Facebook page as well. Education, what examples might you have of education that you're doing for nature and biodiversity in your area? Some of it might be where you're getting a baseline, where you're getting some really good, I mean, some of you have some baseline work that you're starting or that you may have already collated. Some of you will be starting that with the leader project that we're starting shortly with biodiversity training. So you'll be getting a baseline so you can really decide on good conservation actions to take forward. Other things we could be looking at would maybe those of you who've done it already, your biodiversity management plans or your action plans, or as I say, for those of you who are signing up to the leader project, you can mention that a future project will be your biodiversity action plans, where you're identifying areas where you can improve them for biodiversity. Nearly all of you have got a protected area of some sort in your locality, be it the protected sand dunes in Strand Hill or Loch Talt. I think it's something like 35% of the county is designated of European importance. So just mention that if you've got an SPA or an SAC in your area or an NHA, I love throwing out all those different abbreviations. Michael, that's for you again. You know that I just throw these into the conversation here where I can. That's Michael over in the screen. So I'm going to test you guys now. An NHA. Does anybody remember what that might stand for?
Heritage area.
Well done. Well done. So natural heritage area. You've then the European designations are the SACs and the SPAs. The SPAs are for the birds. So the SPAs for the birds would be
protection area.
Special protection area, and the SACs.
Special area.
Special area of conservation.
Thank you. So if you know that, drop that text. Those are the sort of the buzz phrases that your adjudicator would like to see in your entry form. If you know it, so hopefully you don't have to do any research or anything, that you can just drop it in there very quickly. Any walks and talks that you may have done outside of lockdown, or any things that you may have done for people who were stuck within their 5K, anything that you may have done to open activities, or any research that you may have done online, or any pollinator plans, mention those.
Someone's just at Levens, I rang him there to see.
Sorry, I missed what that was. Don't know if that was a comment or not. So that's the sort of thing adjudicators will be looking for nature biodiversity. Then we go into sustainability as well. So sustainability, think back to Debbie's talk, look at the PDF that you got on that. Her big thing was to remember to sell yourself, but also to go back to the basics campaigns and your communication. So she likes to see statistics here. As an adjudicator, I'd be looking to see ways in which you're emphasizing waste prevention. So ways in which you're eliminating or reducing or reusing, be it if there's a mattress recycling, or if there's a new opening hours at Tubbercurry recycling, or in a scrone, you can direct them. Don't forget, you can direct them over the county border to the Ballina-Killala Road recycling centre there. Some of the basics here are really good to emphasize as well. Also, I would be looking to see, well, how are we thinking about resource efficiencies? So efficiencies and water. So that could be your water bottles, your refillable water bottles that you might have given out, or some of your sports clubs may have done, or some of your push button taps, or your water audits that you might have done. Energy could be things to new buildings that might have their solar panels or battery storage or transport. So going back to Rathcormac, they've got the new bus stop on the main street there as well. So they could be areas that you could be looking at and we could be emphasizing on that one. Moving on to litter. Oh, sorry, I've missed a chat there. Sarah's just saying to emphasize that the course will fit in with education as well. I think that was going back to the bit about nature and biodiversity as well. This section is really good, litter and tidiness, where this is where you can put in more than 4 pictures if you can. So this is just a screen grab from Carney's Facebook page. This is from their Easter litter pick this year. So be pictures of statistics from your litter patrols, how many bags you collected, how many of you could recycle. Other things that we look at under litter and tidiness are things such as your litter surveys. So your litter survey would be things such as, and you probably know this, but where do you get most of your litter? When does most of it get dropped? And your litter plan will therefore address it. So it might have been before that maybe some would have been school related litter might have been an issue, or Friday night takeaway litter. Well, we didn't have any of that in the last 12 months. So maybe it would have been people congregating outdoors and having their food outdoors, and you have litter associated with that. I know some of the communities have had big problems with dumping. So you could mention that, or mention what actions you've done to do that. And I've mentioned this before. I love the fact that Leitrim Dog Warden is setting up a DNA database for dog waste in areas of Leitrim.
Great.
If there's anybody here from Ballisodare, I know there was a big 2-page spread in the Champion about a month ago, all about the chronic issues of dog waste in the paper or in the village. And it was quite funny because the paper had about 3 pictures of dog waste in the paper as well. So thinking about that, the tidiness isn't just litter, it's also parking, it's graffiti, it's traffic management. So if your adjudicator in their report 2 years ago talked about issues where there may have been problems with parking in your communities, mention that. And getting back to that walkability and accessibility audits, here you can see the cyclist is able to get through on a closed road, and there's some nice planters there planted up with, I think it's rosemary, so again, nice insect friendly plants there. I put in the picture of, I think this was in possibly Dalkey. It's this pub that's had problems with planning permission for this mural. They had 3 years planning permission for the mural. Planning's now passed. I personally think it's lovely, but I don't know the situation. I'm just looking at the picture that you see online. But as an adjudicator, we would be looking at murals, at advertising. Is the advertising appropriate? Is it too big? Things like that. So again, just so if you've got any good examples, and I know there's been quite a few lovely murals commissioned across the county.
Yeah.
Any questions on that? On tidiness?
Fine.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so moving on, it'd be the second last adjudication category is residential streets and housing areas. So a little bit similar, we'd be looking at the roadside boundary walls or gable ends of houses. There's a photograph here of a ghost estate. Thankfully, I don't think we have many of those now. Property seems to have been snapped up in Sligo. One of the benefits of COVID, you can't get homes around here. Every old house seems to be snapped up. And I know that the Heritage Council had a workshop last week on compulsory purchase orders for buildings that are lying empty and being allowed to become decrepit, that deteriorate, and there's issues on that. And I think that's a national policy issue as well. I might have mentioned before, just having my own personal circumstances where my mum died a couple of years ago, and her house, we had in the north, we had to pay rates even though the house was empty, and property tax, and that sort of is a very good incentive to move properties on and get new people into properties as well. So sorry, as an adjudicator then, we'd be looking at the green spaces. Are there any competitions that you might have done? Any pollinator friendly activities? Any tree planting that you did, or any litter control again in these areas? Just some nice little bits and pieces. You can say that there's some lovely stories that you can do in residential streets. And then finally, approach roads, streets and lanes. And to me, that's a big one because it's your first impression. So where you're making an impact. And this is a place in Cork, and their Facebook page, they're offering free paint or to have your house painted at 50% of costs for homes along the main approach roads into this village. So, you know, are you connecting our cycleways? They've been doing a lot recently in the Sligo cycle campaign. Because of COVID, a lot of walkways have been opened up and widened. Again, real opportunities there to promote some of the differences that have been taken on here. And just last week, the tender was advertised for the Enniskillen Collooney Greenway. So, you know, that'll be about 3 or 4 years' time, but that's actually going to engineers now to get that developed. So there are the different categories of the competition itself. Any questions before I move on sort of content, or questions that you might want to ask about content in those different categories?
Sharon, I had one question, and I don't know how relevant it is, and it might be unachievable, but I'm just wondering, has any kind of leeway been made in terms of the content for activities in this unique year that would maybe not fall under the normal Tidy Towns banner, but is work Tidy Towns groups have taken up under that kind of sustainable communities and working together? Because we would have had quite a lot of groups who for a short period would have changed their core focus and would really have stepped up to work with the county helplines, supporting the most vulnerable. And you know, that could be a Tidy Towns group or a sports group or whatever, but they would have undertaken huge activities that lie outside the norm, but made a huge impact in the community. And I'm just wondering, is there scope for that to be taken into consideration at all?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned briefly that there are 20 special awards.
Okay.
Most of these you have to enter separately, but the very first one is the COVID Community Together Award, and it's in the main entry form. Now, you don't have to fill it in, for those of you who are worried, but it's the very first page on your entry form. And it's to do exactly what you were saying, Sarah. It's to communities who may not have done anything in these 8 categories, but they've done other things with COVID. So it's all about volunteers have had to deal with different challenges during the pandemic. What have you done? So by completing that, not only will you get marks in the actual competition, because it's in the main entry form, your adjudicator will see it and give you marks, but there's also a chance of winning. There's 3 prizes of 1,000 and 1 prize of £2,000 or €2,000 in that. So thank you, Sarah. That's as if we had that played for you to ask that question, because that just landed really nicely. Thank you very much on that one. So yeah, no, that's a really important one. And it's funny because I was talking to the unit and I said, you sort of contradicted yourself by saying the special awards they're not obligatory to enter, but you're saying that they must fill in this one, and they're saying no, but it's in the entry form to really give people the chance to shout about the good work that they have done in the past, all through the pandemic, how they've stepped up and changed and outreach. So it's called Staying Together While Apart. That's what that community focus is. Yeah. And be it, as you say, helping do food deliveries, answering phone calls, I know some community groups were doing, you know, what's within your 5K, anything like that, anything innovative or different, you could put that into that little section, and you do not have to mention sustainable development goals in that little bit either as well. Okay. So Michael, I think Barrett was talking about photos and how difficult it is to get things done. So I have a couple of little tips here on reducing your photo size and what to do. So this was a mural in Abbey in County Galway. So what you would do to reduce the size of that, in your Word document, you would take your cursor, at this point my laser, take your cursor and you double click on the photograph. So do you know what I mean by double click really quickly? And then what happens then is the format bar will appear at the top of your Word document. So this is the format bar here. You can see it says pictures format, and this will pops up when you double click on the format. And you'll give an option here. It says compress pictures. So this is what you press. You press this button that says compress pictures. And then this picture, this will pop up. And you can see here, it says delete cropped areas of pictures or what resolution. So you'd probably be best, I would often use, see where it says web 150 ppi, which is points per square inch. I think it is. It's just sort of hide the depth of quality of your picture. And also I would say delete cropped areas of pictures, yes. And I actually would not apply to that picture. I would apply to every picture as well. So that's how you would compress your pictures. But you may also want to crop your pictures. So here is a picture I took within the 5-kilometer lockdown at the mouth of Ballysadare Bay. Really nice picture, as you can see, but you can see the edge of our boat there. So if I was putting that in for an entry form, I'd want to crop the picture. So how do I do that? Again, you go back to double click on the picture. Your format bar appears, but instead of going to compress, this time I go to the crop icon. Crop, click on the crop, and then the picture becomes active. You'll see these little black edges around the picture, and you can pull them up and pull them in, and then save the picture within the size edges that you want. And then you can get a different picture where you've cut out imagery in there. Okay. So that's how to reduce your photo size, how to crop it so you're not getting the child in the background or something like that that maybe shouldn't be in the photograph. When you have everything ready and you're going to then submit, so you have your entry form with your pictures and your long-term plan. Don't forget your long-term plan that you have. What you're then going to do is zip your file or reduce it in size. So how do you do that? Well, how I would do that, and then you might have different ways to do it, is do it in Windows Explorer. So this is like the file manager in Windows Explorer. So in this here, this is a screen grab of my Windows Explorer or my file manager, and I have 3 pictures here, 3 files here. And you can see here that this PowerPoint that I'm showing you now is 5.2 kilobytes. So you're a lot, 5,156 kilobytes. That's 5 megabytes. Yeah. That's 5 megabytes. So you're allowed about just under 4 times the size of this presentation to submit, which is quite a lot when it's in a PDF format. So if you've got your Word format ready to go, I would PDF it, which is simply save it as a PDF, have it all together in your folder, and then you're going to zip the folder to make your folder smaller. And how you do that, you right click on the folder and this will pop open, and you click send to, and here it says send to compressed zip folder. Yeah. And that will give you the identical folder with the same name, but it's got this little icon here with a zip up the middle, and it's just squeezed it. It's like a corset. It's zipped it up, made it smaller, so you should be able to send it a bit easier. So these are all things, give yourselves a little bit of time, you know, hopefully have your entry form finished by the 30th of June. So you've got 2 days at least to play with it before you submit it. And then attach the compressed zip folder to your email that you send into the department. When you email it in, the email's on the application form, the email's there, you will get an acknowledgement email to say that you've got it. And they will also have on their website a list of all the entries. If you recall, I think in 2019, there were about 10 entries that didn't get adjudicated in time. They were missed, they weren't received by the department. So this is the reason why they're doing this now. So the onus would be on you to make sure you get that acknowledgement email, check the website. If your entry form is not there a week after the closing date and you've sent it in, give the department a ring, the Tidy Towns unit a ring, okay? And that. Okay, there's a chat question here. Let me see. How can you see what size your entry form is? So Mary, if you go back to the Windows Explorer, you can just see, if you remember, I was showing you there, it shows you here the size in your window. So here the document, the Word document that I have written, I'll show you in a second, a different one, which is summary of special awards. It's only 19 kilobytes. Remember, you're like 20 megabytes, so that's 20,000 kilobytes. Okay, so that's where you can see. So you need to make sure you find your file explorer on your screen as well. If you're really stuck and you don't know, if you're happy to file share, I can go on with you sometime and we can on your computer and we can do a file share as well and help you with that. Also, the department, they've got 4 staff there and they're very helpful. And then they've got any queries you can have as well. And I just put this in because I always forget how this is awarded. But in the competition, different communities can get a gold, silver, or bronze medal. And how those medals are awarded is if you fall within a specific range of marks of the overall winner. So if you're a community that's a population size A or B, I'm not sure, that might be Carney, not sure. If they're within 5 points of the national winner of the same size, so the highest village or town sized A or B, if they're within 5 points, they will get a gold medal. If they're within 10 points, they'll get silver, or within 15, they'll get bronze. Now, it's very different for population sizes G and H. So I think, Michael Barrett, I think that's where we get down to Sligo. I'm not sure if Sligo's a G or an F, but the points discrepancy is much bigger. So if you get within 20 points of the overall winning town, that's a population G or H, you get a gold medal, and you get a bronze medal if you're within 40 points of that. If you want to find out those details, that's in your entry. It's in the terms and conditions of the entry form as well. Okay. I want to go on to special awards, if that's okay, in the last sort of 10 minutes or so. I've just got another question. Oh, Geraldine's shooting off, that's fine. Your adjudicator does not normally see your special awards. There are 20 different separate special awards, all funded by the EPA, the Heritage Council, the Architects Association of Ireland. So I'm highlighting that technically they go to 20 different judging panels. So if you entered all 20 awards, that you could be awarded all 20 awards, because there's no sort of cross-checking if everybody in Sligo has won the awards. So that's one thing to be aware of. There are 66,000 euros worth of prizes for these special awards. And if you think to get a medal, you get 1,000 euros. Well, this is a really good, quick way of getting cash for your community. There are cash prizes, the smallest being 500. The largest cash prize is 3,000 in your pocket. And there's different packages For example, there's 3 different packages where you might get a registered architect to come and do a plan or proposal for your community. There's also one of these solar powered bins, compactor bins. They're worth £7,000 and they've come up this year for the first time. So there's 20 awards, 18 of them are separate entry forms that you have to look at. Nearly all of them will be 3 weeks after the 2nd of July. Now, I'll say that this has not been confirmed. They've asked for all the different sponsors to have their deadline date 3 weeks after. And that will be confirmed on Friday when the next Tidy Towns newsletter comes out. There's only one of these entry forms that must be within the 2nd of July, which is the date that you submit your own entry form. And that's for this solar powered bin. And it's the simplest entry form. So 2 things. This is the first year they've separated the special awards deadline from the normal deadline. So you've got a chance to enter more things. It just gives you a bit of breathing space, just to highlight that. I'm going to email this document to you. Do not panic, but it's my sort of summary understanding. In the entry form itself, if you go on at the start of your Tidy Towns form, there's about 5 or 6 pages going through all the different entry forms that there are. I have them all, I printed them off, I've gone through them, but this is my summary of what they are. So the new ones at the start, the one that Sarah just highlighted is the COVID Community Award. What have you done in COVID? It's a very simple, it's part of the standard entry form. You don't have to do an awful lot, but there's some really nice prizes together about what you can do. Other ones, this is solar powered bin, I've just mentioned. The nice one here is the Young Person's Tidy Towns Award. Now it's only one prize, it's £1,000, but it's the first time, if you've a Tidy Towns group that you've done a lot of work with young people aged 16 to 24, it might be worth putting in an entry for it. And they've asked for quotes for young people in that. There's the Sustainable Development Awards, and they actually have 6 prizes, 2 at 1,500 and 4 at 500. There's a 2-page Word document. It's 2,000 words in total. And you might, because you've already completed your Tidy Towns entry form, hopefully you'll be able to copy and paste a lot of the stuff into this entry form. So I would say go for that. There's a circular economy one. It's a PDF form, so you have 1,000 words. I mentioned the shop front with Ballymote. So you provide a photograph and address of 2 shop fronts in your community and why you want an architect to come in and give you a little bit of advice and have a look around your village. Those are the first 6 that I'm highlighting. The next ones, if you've done anything in particular for autism, anything autism friendly, enter number 7. It's called the Super Value ASEAN Inclusive Community Awards. There's a Gaeltacht Award, number 8, only for those of you who enter the competition in Irish. So I don't think that applies to anybody in Sligo County at the moment. There's the Gum Litter Task Force Award. I'm highlighting this one because I think their entries have been low. So if you're trying to be tactical and think, well, what can I go for, which hasn't had a lot of entries, it's this one. And you simply answer some questions, what you do at work, school, and the public shops, or with bodies to tackle gum litter in your community as well. The nice one, number 10, is the Town Challenge. Buncrana won that in 2019, and is to get an architect to come and design solutions for your whole community. There's a new one here, the Heritage Award. If you've got a group that have done a lot to highlight local heritage, again, coming back to Rathcormac, I think you did a lot opening up the monuments, didn't you? And you've got some signage for some of the megalithic tombs in your area. So that might be one for you guys to consider. Number 12, okay. Oh, sorry, number 12 is the Windows Award. That's different from the previous one. That was the Shopfront Award. So the Shopfront number 6 is different from number 12, which I want Ballymote to go for, and the windows. There's the Leave No Trace principles. It's a training program that you would win from that if you want to do a bit more about getting people out and about leaving no trace. And there's another €1,000 prize if you've done some really good work on trees. And so if you've done some tree planting, you provide 3 photographs of the trees and why the trees have benefited your community where you've planted them. The last few awards here, there's Climate Action and Air Quality Awards. And I just want to highlight there's a lot of money for this and prize money. There's 2 €2,000 prizes, there's 3 €500 prizes, and 1 prize here, especially for work that you might have done with young people. So again, if you've done a project with young people that raises awareness about climate change or air quality. And I'm thinking if you've worked on any work with schools, we talked before about no idling and turning off the your car engines for pickups outside schools. If you've done something like that, maybe that's one to throw in for that. There's a Canna Award. It's a really simple one. If you've got some whiz kid on social media, getting to take photographs now of where people can collect aluminium cans and tag it by social media. It's a very simple award, but they want tags on social media. Oh, sorry. And then the 2 really popular ones, and also because they've got the biggest prize money, is the Law Pro one and the Water and Communities prizes. You've heard Karen Kennedy talk about that. It's a Word document. It's got 5 questions that you answer in the Word document. The really popular one is the All Ireland Pollinator Plan. 9 prizes split by region. So different regions will get one. There's a winner and a runner-up for each region. There's 10 separate questions to be answered on that. So questions like, what are you doing about mowing machines? What are you doing for pesticides? What are you doing when planting? And then the final award is the Island Award, and the only community here in the county eligible that would be Coney Island, because you have to be cut off at high tide and that. Again.
What do the island ones have to do?
They have to be an island. I don't think they fill in a separate entry form. I think they're automatically entered into that competition.
It's on an island, yeah.
So it's the same with the Gaeltacht Awards, or the entries of Gaelica. They don't have to do anything. They're just automatically entered into it. I can double check that for you if you want me to. That's what my understanding of it was. Okay. Coming up to the last, sorry, it's coming up to 8:05. The last things I mentioned before, that super value of actually promoting a community survey. This has nothing to do with the competition, but they're giving, I think, 10 €100 gift cards for people who are filling in the survey. I did it earlier on today. There's about 10 questions. It's trying to find out why you do this. What's your reason for helping do tidy towns? How much litter or how many volunteers do you have? Should take you about 5 and 10 minutes if you want to be in a chance of winning that one. So I think coming to the end, remember the unit is there to help you. The phone numbers, the details are here. I will email this presentation to you. I will email you that 3-page summary sheet of all those entry forms as well. I would emphasize that's my understanding of the competition special awards, just haven't gone through them all. But hopefully.
Sarah, can I just, sorry, no, it's just, Sarah, and I'm just wondering, I've learned so much from listening to what the groups have done over this course that probably before I wouldn't have heard much of at all. And as a collective, you can see the difference that's made. And I'm just very conscious of the PPN not to leave here and again the groups go off and you know that impact that they're making isn't reflected anywhere. And we talked about this kind of mapping of what the tidy towns do and this kind of interactive map showing all this stuff. So I'm wondering, now it might need to be after the competition is judged, and that's fair enough, but I'm wondering if groups would mind sending us on their application forms and see if we can take some of the content and what they're doing and create this map of the county with it, looking at what tidy towns groups are based where, looking at how they're achieving the SDGs, using photos to kind of map what they're doing, and kind of allowing people to tap in and look at it. And I'm just wondering, would any groups be happy to share those forms with us? No.
Sarah, I understand, I think what you're saying there. I've learned a huge amount from looking in on this, and it makes me very sad because I spent nearly 20 years collecting litter, you know, on the N4 at the 2 entries into Boyletown, and in the last few years then Anne was involved. We had a team going, but in the last few years it would appear that there's no proper team organized for it, and all of this wonderful stuff that's here that I would love to share. I have shared some with some PPN members, and I think though that probably a lot of what I've learned now, I want to try and make sure it gets somewhere for next year rather than this year, because I've heard. And then when I looked up the Tidy Town and saw all the towns in Roscommon that are entered, I saw, oh, where's Boylan? There's 900 at all in it. And so that's why I'd asked the question. Might sound very odd, but like if you had entered before for a Tidy Town competition, do you have to automatically re-enter and send send an application form each time, or does it come out to you? Does the form automatically come out to you?
If you entered last year, it should automatically come out to you, and there should be a group. You should be on their database. If it was a couple of years ago, that maybe you've had a 2 or 3 year gap, you won't automatically. So if you're unsure, that address I just showed you at the end, I would email or ring them and ask them to add you to the database, and they will keep you updated and send you the application form. There's more and more people joining every year. The numbers are growing. Possibly also because government is pushing a lot of funding through the Tidy Towns mechanism.
Yeah, there used to be such a lot of activity going on in our local area. And then I see from the list of towns and villages throughout County Roscommon, there's still X amount. But all of this stuff and thanks to you, Sarah, and Sligo PPN for putting on all of this, it's been outstanding. I've learned so much that I'm nearly ready to go around and knock on all my house on my residence estate and say, come on guys, let's go. We're very close to the main entrance to the Boyle area, and there's just so many of those categories. And your summary, Sharon, is terrific. That in itself I intend sending round to each of the PPN groups in County Roscommon and say, look, you know, even if you don't go in for the main thing, look what you can go in for, and start getting an interest in being part of all of this again. I think it's all
great. Don't send it to too many in Roscommon. We want some of the Sligo groups to win. Don't give away all the secrets.
Fair enough.
Sorry, Sharon, can we
Yes.
just have a question about a building in Tubbercurry?
The shop front one for the special awards, can it be in like a solicitor's office where he might have his office?
Yeah, let me just put, so it is, I'm just going through the thousands of entry forms that they have here. The shop front award. So
One all.
They want 2 buildings with 2 good shop fronts. Yeah, so a shop front is a commercial building.
Commercial building.
Be fine.
Right, okay.
Yeah. And all it is, you know, you're only talking a small amount of money, but it's only literally that's the size of the entry form. That's all it is. And it's you need the photographs and the address of the
So it's not a before and an after, it's just a photograph of the building.
Of 2 buildings. So you have to pick 2.
Okay. Okay.
Pick 2. Actually, it does say provide a statement why architectural support would be required, because you're winning architectural support as well.
Okay.
On that, but remember where I showed you the Tidy Towns website at the start, where you get the competition forms?
Yes.
The categories below has all the entry forms as well. About 2/3 of them are in Word format, so you can download them and type them in, and they're all email entries again this year as well.
Thank you,
Any
Sharon.
other questions there? do you need plant permission from the owner of the building? I would have thought it was good practice to do that. But for example, if you're going to have to wait and get permission from the guards to do it, I'm not sure. Submit the overall facade of 2 buildings with good shop fronts in your well-kept historic cut shop fronts and modern shop fronts are equally valid. So it can be modern or traditional in that one. Michael, I would suggest you probably do just, you know, for good practice. So, Sarah, getting back to your point, I think it'd be really good for Sligo to have some sort of collective, even if it's the Sligo information from that Tidy Towns survey, or you know, even if all the Tidy Towns group, as you said, after this, if we got some good questions and we could help pull that together and
Yeah,
some statistics,
I think it would be
really
good. I mean, we could very easily create a Sligo Tidy Towns kind of page within our website for the PPN, which could have you know, the sharing of the ideas. They can have a blog function if groups want to ask each other anything. We can do the interactive map of where all the groups are based, how to contact them, the kind of work they do, and you know, who's won what. We can map who's won the bronze and what, you know.
Yeah.
So I think it's something we could really nicely build up.
Could you have on that, like the resources, like all the PDFs or the presentations from this?
Exactly,
you could have them
yeah.
there. You could have a resources page that people can dip
We
in
already
and
have that
get it.
one page for this training program, but I see that the scope to actually make it far bigger than that. You know, this training program would nearly need to be a post within the page. So you go into this post and you have all these sections, but the page is far bigger. The page is about where the groups are and all that they're doing, and you know, activities that they've got coming up and things.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, I'm just looking at all my entry forms. Any other questions on that, on anything? My big thing would be to say to you, good luck. Don't be afraid to, if you have another question, come back to me anytime. Except not at midnight on the 1st of July. All right, good luck, everybody. We will PDF the presentation tonight, and I'm going to stop recording now.